Assalamu alaikum girls. This is time for your biology class. So today we are going to uh, read the topic which is about the passage of molecules. We'll read, we'll understand and we'll comprehend about this topic, which is about the passage of molecules into and out of the cells. So how do the molecules pass into the cells and how do they are passing out of the cells? This is what we are going to study. This is a very important topic in terms of short answers, because we will be studying diffusion, facilitated diffusion and osmosis, and in your short answers and even in the parts of the long answer they can ask about the differences between these three. So you have to make notes about the differences between these three, and then you have to show it to me. Okay, you have to make columns, three columns, and then write it down. So I'll be guiding you afterwards also. We all know that the cell membranes, they have barrier to most of they act as barrier to most of the molecules, but not all molecules. As we discussed uh, during the structure of the the structure of the cell membrane. In the fluid mosaic model, it shows that there is a lipid bilayer, and then there are proteins, and glycoproteins and cholesterols are also there. So actually there are some of the proteins, they are carrier proteins, they allow, okay, that we'll be discussing later. So first of all, the membranes are semi-permeable. The cell membranes, they maintain equilibrium inside the cell as well as outside by exchanging matter with cells. What do? The cell membranes, they maintain equilibrium. What's equilibrium? It's balance inside the cell and outside the cell. For example, the water molecule or the water content should be equal inside the cell and outside the cell. What is outside the cell? There is extracellular space, some spaces which are outside the cells. All the cells are together, but there are spaces outside the cells also, so we have to maintain a balance. Okay, um, we have now the cell membranes are semi permeable. Semi means they allow some things to pass into them and not all. Semi means half, and permeable means it's permeable, like it can allow some things to go through, to pass inside, and some of the molecules to pass outside. Okay, so we are talking about like animal cells and plant cell and all the cells. So they say that according to the needs, for example, if it needs some molecules, it will allow it to pass inside, and if it does not need some molecules, it will pass them out of the cell. Okay, cell membranes do it through the phenomena of diffusion, facilitated diffusion, osmosis, filtration, active transport, endocytosis and exocytosis. So all these terms we are going to discuss: diffusion and facilitated diffusion, osmosis and active transport. These three four, they are related to each other. That is why they are given in questions. Okay, not because the others are not important. Filtration and endocytosis and exocytosis is also important, but usually they are compared: diffusion, facilitated diffusion, osmosis and active transport. Okay, so diffusion is the movement of molecules from an area of higher concentration to the area of lower concentration. For example, so diffusion can occur anywhere in solids, liquids, and gases. When they are in motion and that substance is and the temperature is above than 0 degrees Kelvin or 273 degrees or minus 273 degrees centigrade. So one thing must be kept in consideration, that what is minus? Minus is very cold. Okay, 0 is the temperature which is the freezing point of water. Okay, so remember, if you go in minus, what will be the temperature? Then the temperature will be much less, so it's too cold. And if it's and according to according to the studies, below minus 273 degrees centigrade or 0 degrees Kelvin, they are the same. So in Kelvin it is 0, and in centigrade it is minus 23 degrees centigrade. There is no movement of the substance, like no molecules can move. Any living substance is like totally frozen. Okay, at 0 it's the water is frozen, but at these temperatures each and every thing in the world is frozen, like each and every element. Okay, in a substance, majority of the molecules move from higher to lower concentration, although there are some which move from lower to higher concentration. Eventually the molecules reach a state. Okay, now what happens is, I'll give you a very easy example. For example, if you are cooking food at home, what happens? The smell, the odor, it is spread in all the house. Why? Because it is going from higher concentration to lower concentration. Please, this definition is very important. Diffusion is the movement of molecule from the area of higher to the area of lower concentration, that is along the concentration gradient. What is the concentration gradient? From higher concentration to lower concentration. Understand? From higher concentration to lower concentration. This is the, for example, this is your higher concentration. This area is the higher concentration. This area is the higher concentration, like many molecules are here. So they will move where? To the lower concentration where there are less molecules. Okay, so for example, if I am talking about water molecules, if I am talking about gases, anything. For example, if you put the perfume in a room, if you put the air freshener in your room, what happens? After some time the smell is going to spread, and the whole room spreads amazing. Why? These because these all molecules, they are going to um, spread, and they are going to diffuse. The phenomena is known as diffusion. I am trying to make you understand in very easy language. Okay, that they are going to move from higher concentration to lower concentration, and in a substance. And they say the diffusion is one principal method movement substance in the cell. For example, carbon dioxide, for example, oxygen, for example, glucose. They all cross membranes by diffusion. Like the carbon dioxide, it is going to move from higher concentration to lower concentration. Understand? Same. The oxygen, it is going to move from higher concentration to lower concentration. For example, this is a cell which has more oxygen, and this is a cell which has less oxygen. So it will go from, this oxygen will move from this cell to this cell, because this cell which has low oxygen needs more oxygen. Same is the case with glucose. If this cell has more glucose, now this glucose will be moving from this cell to this cell. Why? Because it needs more. This is known as the concentration gradient. For example, in the gills of the fish, the diffusion takes place, and it crosses cell membranes by diffusion. So from one cell membrane, where is the cell membrane? This is the cell membrane. Okay, this is the cell membrane, and this is also the cell membrane of this cell. Okay, this is the cell membrane. With the help of this purple arrow, the cell membrane is shown, and this cell membrane, the oxygen can diffuse from one cell membrane to the other, and you can see the blue arrows how the oxygen is moving. And this happens in the gills of the fish also, for the transport of the oxygen. Movement of glucose molecules from a starter from small intestine lumen into the blood capillaries of villi is another example of diffusion. So you have now examples of diffusion. Also, write here write here example, because these are all the examples of diffusion. The glucose molecules from the smaller intestine, they move into the blood capillaries. Why? Because the food which is present in the small intestine has to be absorbed by the blood capillaries of the villi, and this is again an example of diffusion. Villi are part of small intestine. They absorb food and they transport it to all the parts of the body. Because a cell does not expend energy when molecules diffuse across its membrane, the diffusion is a passive transport. Now see, passive transport means we are going to we are not going to uh, we are not going to use energy. We are not going to use energy in this process. In diffusion, we are not going to use energy. And if we say expenditure of energy, it is the same thing. We are not going to expend energy. It means we are not going to use energy, because this is a normal phenomena. They move from higher concentration to lower concentration. We are not using any energy. It's just happening easily. It's just happening um, without the use of any energy. So we are not using any force. Okay, this is a passive transport. In any transport in which energy is not used, we call it passive transport. And if we are going to use energy, that we are going to force that action. That is active transport, and in that case we are using energy. Now facilitated diffusion. What is facilitated diffusion? Many molecules do not diffuse freely across the membranes because of their size. Some of the molecules, they have larger size, and some of the molecules, they have different charges. So as we know that molecules have charges, we know that different substances have charges. Same way, the molecules have charges. And in case of facilitated diffusion, these molecules can in case of normal diffusion, they cannot move because their size is larger. They cannot go through the cell membrane, and their charge is different, so they cannot pass through the cell membrane. What happens? Such molecules are taken into or out of the cells with the help of transport proteins present in the cell membrane. For example, if this is your cell membrane, there are some transport proteins present here. Okay, or these transport proteins, they do what? They allow the molecules to come inside, which cannot come. They allow the some of the molecules to come inside. Why? Because their charge is different, or their charge is different, or their size is bigger. They cannot come here directly. This is wrong. They cannot come here directly, so they use the carrier proteins. Okay, sorry, transport proteins. They use the transport proteins. The rate of the facilitated diffusion is higher than simple diffusion. Why? Because as we know that the cell membrane is semi-permeable, it is not going to allow each and everything to pass through the cell membrane and get inside the cell, and it is again not going to allow each and every molecule to pass out of the cell, because it is semi-permeable. Some of the molecules are allowed and some of the molecules are not allowed. So simple diffusion is seen less in the cell, but facilitated diffusion is more. Facilitated diffusion is more than the normal diffusion. Okay, facilitated diffusion is also a type of passive transport. So what did you get? Both of them are passive transport, both of them are diffusion. But in case of facilitated diffusion, what is the difference? In case of facilitated diffusion, you use transport proteins. Transport proteins are used. And in case of the diffusion, there are no transport proteins. Okay, is this one more thing? No expenditure of energy, that is why we call them no expenditure of energy. That is why it's a passive transport. Both of them are passive transport. Both of them are a type of diffusion, so that is why no energy is needed. But in case of facilitated diffusion, carrier proteins are present. These this here I showed, please don't get confused. Here I showed two different cells. In this area I showed two different cells. And here I showed this area is the cell membrane. Okay, this is the cell membrane. This is not one cell and this is not another cell. These are transport proteins. This gray one and this gray one is the transport protein, and this green line is the cell membrane. So this is, we are talking about this one single cell. Okay, now see, in this diagram it is very easy for you to understand the phenomena of diffusion and facilitated diffusion. See, in case of, I told you that when I in my diagram I showed that if something is getting inside the cell, but in this diagram they are showing if something is getting outside the cell. If something is getting outside the cell, what happens is that it does not need any kind of carrier proteins in case of diffusion, but in case of facilitated diffusion it needs transport proteins. And with the help of transport proteins, they can some molecules can go outside. Why? Because of the charge and because of the size. Their size can be bigger and their charge is different. And what is this? Actually, this all is the cell membrane. This this is the cell membrane, and it's a bilayer. We already know that bilayer means this is the first layer and this is the second layer of the lipid. So lipid bilayer is present in a cell membrane. This is a carrier protein, this is a transport protein, and the diffusion is taking place here without the help of transport protein. And here this diffusion is known as facilitated diffusion. Why? Because it it needs transport proteins for the molecules to pass. Now see, osmosis. Osmosis is something again very interesting. The phenomena of osmosis is the movement of water across us. Now always remember, whenever they talk about osmosis is the same thing, but uh, it's it's related to the movement of water. It's the movement of water across a semi-permeable membrane from the solution of lesser solute concentration to a solution of higher solute concentration. Now, if I give you an example, for example, for example, if there is a solution, first you have to know what is a hypertonic solution and what is a hypotonic solution. Hypertonic means, hyper means more, so hypertonic solution has more solute. Solute can be sugar, solute can be salt. If you are putting sugar in water, uh, and the sugar acts as a solute. If you are putting salt in water, the salt acts as a solute. And a hypotonic solution is a solution which has less solute. So relatively means as compared to, hypertonic solution has more solute as compared to hypotonic solution, and a hypotonic solution has less solute as compared to hypertonic solution. Please be very clear with this concept. Hypertonic is something which has more sugar, if you're talking about water and sugar, as compared to some other solution which has less sugar. Understand? Now it's easy for you. Isotonic solution means equal concentration of solutes. Okay, so if I give you an example, if you are making a sugar syrup and that sugar syrup is very concentrated, it means it's very hypertonic, it means it has a lot of sugar in it. Then you do what? You take some other solution which is hypotonic. Hypotonic means less sugar, more water. Understand? Less solute, more solvent. Water is the solvent. Solvent and solute. Remember the solvent and the solute. The solute is something which we put inside a solvent. So the water is more and the sugar is less. So this is solute, solvent, solution is, and the short form of solution is SOLN, solution. So isotonic solution has equal concentration of solute. What happens if you mix the both solutions with each other? If you mix them, what happens? There is one there, then you see another solution, and that solution is isotonic. Isotonic means the solution will, for example, if you have two glasses of syrup, one has more sugar and one has less sugar. If you mix them both, what happens? The taste will be the same. If you mix them both, what happens? The taste will be the same. It will become one solution, which is isotonic. Isotonic means the solute will be distributed equally in that resultant solution. Understand? Please, if you don't understand, ask me, okay? Because this is a little bit confusion, but if you get it, it's very easy for you. Now, one more thing, the semi-permeable membrane. This is they are showing you the membrane, which is the semi-permeable membrane. For example, they are giving you an example of a cell, but inside a beaker. They are showing this in the form of a glass. Okay, this is water. The blue one is water, and the red one is the solute sugar. So what happens? The blue molecules move towards the red one. It means from the high from the higher concentration to the lower concentration. So osmosis is actually diffusion. Okay, water moves from hypertonic solution to hypotonic solution. Okay, so the water moves from hypotonic to hypertonic. I typed it incorrectly. So hypotonic means where the molecules of the solute are less. Where there is less sugar, the water is going to move away from there. Why? Because it wants to the cell membrane, the semi-permeable cell membrane, this green area, it wants to maintain a balance. Perpetuating a perpetuating balance, what happens is these molecules are going to move from here to here because we want balance. Water will move from, see here, dilute hypotonic solution, and the water will move from dilute hypotonic solution to the concentrated hypertonic solution. So the actual direction of movement is this one. Okay, now after some time the water molecules, they move from dilute concentrated solution to the uh, through this semi-permeable membrane. Now what happens is water is moving from hypotonic solution to hypertonic solution. For what? For balance. Because now what happens is that the water is completely balanced. Water molecules here and here, they are both same concentration. Okay, so actually if you think about it, what happened? The water moved from higher concentration to lower concentration. Okay, the first point, the water was moving from higher concentration to lower concentration. Point number two, there is no expenditure of energy. So this is a passive transport. And so we can say that osmosis is totally totally similar to diffusion, but the main difference is that in osmosis we only talk about water molecules, nothing other than water molecules. So these water molecules, they do what? They get transported from higher concentration to lower concentration. This is osmosis, and this is same as diffusion. But in case of osmosis, we only discuss water molecules and no other molecules. And again, if you say that water moves from hypotonic solution to hypertonic solution, it is the same thing. It is moving from higher concentration to lower concentration. But why hypotonic solution? Because the solute is less here and the water molecule is more. The water molecule have higher concentration and the water molecules are moving to the lower concentration. So this is diffusion, the same thing. but actually this is related to water molecules, so we call them osmosis. Okay, this page number 71 is omitted, 72 is also omitted. Now we are going to start filtration. What is filtration? Filtration is a process by which small molecules are forced to move across semi-permeable membrane with the aid of hydrostatic pressure or blood pressure. So what actually is filtration? Filtration is the process by which the small molecules are forced to move across semi-permeable membrane with the help of hydrostatic. Hydrostatic is related to the water pressure or the blood pressure. For example, when we are talking about the body of an animal, the blood pressure is there and it forces the water and the dissolved molecules to move through the semi-permeable membrane of the capillary cell walls. So if you see this direction, this is the blood pressure, and the blood pressure is making the molecules move. Okay, and this is, what is this? This is a capillary wall. This is the pressure of the blood. What are capillaries? Capillaries are very small thin vessels in which blood is present, and the membrane of the, and here again the small molecules are the green ones, they are moving. Okay, and these larger molecules, they cannot move. Why? Because the capillaries will not allow them to move. So what are they trying to explain? That semi-permeable membranes, again which membranes? Semi-permeable. Why semi-permeable? Because you know that capillaries are related to the transport of oxygen. They diffuse the oxygen, they transport the oxygen, they spread the oxygen. So they do what? Oxygen is transported with the help of capillaries and with the help of diffusion. Okay, so that is why they need semi-permeable walls for the transport of oxygen, and with the help of these semi-permeable walls, some small molecules of water and other dissolved substances can also move. The main function is the transport of oxygen, which is not mentioned in your book, but I am telling you because this is the main function. And as a result of this semi-permeable membrane, what happens? The water can also move and some small molecules can also move. Why? Because of the hydrostatic pressure, because of the pressure of the water or the pressure of the blood pressure. Because the capillaries have blood, no water. In some areas it can be possible that the water is moving and some other substances also move with them, but not in capillaries. In case of capillaries, only blood can move. uh, no, water can no, the pressure is of the blood, but water can move. Okay, because capillaries contain blood, capillaries do not contain water. Water can move outside the capillaries, yes, but the pressure inside the capillaries is because of the blood, and it is not because of the water. Okay, in filtration, the pressure cannot force large molecules such as protein. For example, these large molecules, these yellow ones, they cannot pass. Can they pass? No, they cannot pass. Okay, why? Because the larger molecules cannot pass through this membrane, because this membrane is semi-permeable. This membrane is semi-permeable and it can allow smaller molecules to pass through it, but not the larger, for example, proteins, through the membrane pores. Actually, they have pores, these small pores are there and they pass through the pores. Okay, because of the pressure of the blood, some water molecules are passing outside, and in case of capillaries, and in case of some other uh, areas and vessels, the water pressure, the hydrostatic pressure again allows some of the smaller molecules to pass out of the vessels, from out of the cell membranes, from out of the cell membrane pores, and this is again a process which is known as filtration. Okay, so this is the definition of the filtration. Please underline this. Okay, this definition of the filtration is important. Okay, so these topics are very important. Please go through them, read them, try to understand the same day, which I gave you the lecture. Why? Because it will be easy for you to understand, otherwise you will be forgetting whatever you whatever you understood. Okay, please start learning.